Hello and welcome to episode 15 of the Exponential Show. Thanks to our friends at Multiply Marketing for sponsoring the production of this episode. Today, it is with great pleasure that I introduce Paul Meyers, the head coach at Asia Founder Coaching. And Paul, as I've learned through my various interactions with him, is a seasoned entrepreneur in the true sense of the phrase. Paul, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today.
My pleasure. I'm glad we could do this.
The pleasure's all mine. So, Paul, let's start with the one question that we ask all our guests, which is, what is your origin story? What I know it's difficult.
It's a long story, but yeah, we'll try to keep it the short version.
Yeah. So, what are perhaps the key milestones in your journey that got you where we are today?
Okay, sure. I'm American, as you can probably tell, but I've lived in Asia close to 35 years now. I started as a filmmaker, actually. I trained as a documentary filmmaker. And at that time in the States, you couldn't make much money making documentary films. So I started making corporate films. And eventually I settled in San Francisco and in the Bay Area in the mid-'80s and worked for a lot of tech companies. Some you know, like Apple and IBM and HP, and others, mainframe manufacturers and software guys who are long out of business, right? But I started to be sent to Asia to create documentaries and marketing films based here, and I fell in love with it. So I wrote my first business plan, raised some money, opened a branch of my production company, in Singapore. I looked at Hong Kong, I looked at Singapore. Singapore was dangling money, making the Hollywood of the East. So I drank the Kool-Aid and I ended up there. And I was basically there for the better part of 30 years. Eventually moved out of filmmaking and into interactive kinds of things. I made kids interactive CD-ROMs, like if you remember like the Magic School Bus and stuff like that. Oh, wow. It was that era. I didn't make that, but I made other ones. And then I worked with what is now CNBC Asia. Back then it was called Asia Business News, and I was head of multimedia because there was no internet. And I led a project that delivered streaming news service to your PC over part of the broadcast signal. Okay, and that ended. They were bought by NBC. We all got laid off, and the next day I helped start an internet company. So I was one of the four first people helping to start this internet company. Over the course of the next 3 years, we grew to 650 people, and all the way to a NASDAQ listing. So the whole rocket ship. And I knew none of that, of course, then. So I learned to raise money. I learned about $60 million. I earned about $60 million. I opened up 8 different countries. I brought Western media brands to the Asian internet space. So I started MTVAsia.com. I brought CNET to Asia. I brought eOnline to Asia. I brought DoubleClick to Asia when it was a separate company. And even Fashion TV, when it was first starting their internet, brought that to Asia as well. So we went public on the second worst day in the history of NASDAQ, even still. We were all wealthy for about 6 minutes. But then it was gone. Then a few months later, that company was gone. So started to do some other things, started another company. I became the largest games distributor, mobile games distributor in Southeast Asia. Before there was an app store, before there was Google Play. We all had Java phones and ringtones and Britney Spears ringtones. I sold a lot of them back then, yes. And I had a company here, actually in Bangkok, with about 15 people here. And I had a company in Manila, and I had it all over Southeast Asia. Nice. And eventually I sold that, became a single dad, did that for a while, and then got involved with helping in the ecosystem. So I became EIR for a large venture firm called SOSV. I then ran a regional accelerator program for Telstra, the large Australian telco. And then I worked at ADB, Asian Development Bank, to help start ADB Ventures. Okay, so kind of all over the map, all around the ecosystem, and now I coach. So ideally what I do is I work with founders, and I help them coach and get through all the myriad problems that they have, mostly because I've bumped my head on many of those walls already myself, right? And I do some teaching and I work with other accelerator programs, but generally it's education and support and coaching for founders.
Pretty cool. Yes, it's been quite a journey, and I mean, dare I say it's been a fun ride because there's a lot of industries that you mentioned. You sort of caught it at the right time.
But actually, about a year too early for all of them. Right.
Well, better than late.
Yeah, true, right.
But so in your current role as a founder coach and at Asia Founder Coaching, can you describe broadly the kind of work that you do with founders and also the Founder Circle events that you organize? Can you tell us a bit more about those?
Sure. Two different things. Let's start with Founder Circle, okay? Because that's finite. The coaching we can talk about forever. But the Founder Circle is a mastermind, closed-door mastermind session that I do in alternating months in Bangkok and Singapore. Started in Singapore now. It's into its third year, maybe a fourth year now of doing it there. Wow. 8 to 10 people, founders or executives in fast-growing companies, talking about the problems and issues that they have in a intimate, closed-door, nothing leaves the room kind of session that provides support internally. We help one another address the problems and come up with solutions, okay? In a very supportive, non-suggestive, but a very supportive fashion. So I've been doing that for a while, and it's been great. I thought initially it would be a moneymaker. I'm not making money on it. I thought it would be a funnel for coaching, and it's finally starting to turn into a funnel for coaching. But what I do now is I just really enjoy doing it, and it supports a lot of the community. And I've had about 300 founders around the region go through it. A little bit more about Founder Circle, just while we can.
Sure.
Maybe 300 founders around the region have now gone through it. I have a number of people who have come back, alumni, who have come back a number of times. In fact, last time I was in Singapore, one of the people who came to the very first one actually showed up again, which was nice to see.
Coming full circle.
Full circle again, right. And I try really hard to make sure that gender numbers are equal. I'm a really big supporter of female founders, and I really beat the drum to try to get more female founders in, because you know what the numbers are. I mean, like 2% of all startups globally are female funded. Founded, they receive funding. So I really try to make sure that female founders are represented, and of course it makes the entire discussion very different. A bunch of guys sitting around talking, or 9 guys and 1 woman is very different than 5 guys and 5 women, or 7 women and 3 guys. You know, the whole dynamic's different. So I really try to make that happen.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And it sounds like such a useful thing to do. Like you said, it might not be a direct money maker, but just making those connections, I'm sure, is not only valuable for the people who are in that room, but also I imagine for you as well to sort of keep your knives sharp, as if I may.
Yeah, and I really enjoy it. I mean, I learn stuff all the time, right? And one of the amazing things is, somewhat organically, a theme always develops around the day's discussions. So one day we're talking about raising money, another time we're talking about letting people go, or advisors, or how you deal with your partner at home, or all sorts of interesting different questions. I don't lead the discussion, the founders lead the discussion, but it just kind of emerges, and I really like that. And I'm always learning stuff, so.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And on the other side, then there's Asia Founder Coaching.
Right.
So could you tell us a bit more about what you do there, and what essentially prompted you to start that?
Sure. Well, what prompted me to start that was I wrapped up my engagement at Asian Development Bank. I thought I'd take a couple of months off and think about what I wanted to do. And what happened was COVID hit, and then of course nobody was getting hired, or you know, I was living in Singapore at the time, and I thought maybe this is a good inflection point. Figure out next 10, 15 years, what do I want to be doing? And I talked to a lot of people, and I thought that I don't believe I have another startup in me, though never say never, but I felt like I can help other founders, right? I can help other founders change the world, right? Because I'm a big believer in entrepreneurship and founders and coming up with new ideas and new solutions. And I thought that, okay, I can help you and you and you and you do these things. So put my experience and hopeful wisdom to help other founders do that. So that was the genesis of it. I work with founders. My sweet spot is post-Series A. Founders who have raised money. All of a sudden the game changes. Getting your product market fit done and getting some money and trying to find your MVP and figure out who your audience is one stage. But then you raise 5, 10, $20 million. It's a whole different ballgame. You've leveled up to another game. And that's where a lot of first-time founders really struggle. It's like, oh my God, what am I doing now, right? And that's kind of my sweet spot, what I call the Better Call Paul moment, right? It's like, what do I do? How do I hire a CFO? How do I expand to Indonesia? What does my accounting look like? How do I manage teams? Where before a tech team was 3 guys, now it's like 20 people across 3 countries. Most founders don't have that range of experience. I look at my coaching as, and different from say like life coaching or even executive coaching, is that on one side, think of a continuum. On one side you have all the operational stuff. How do I hire a CFO? How do I expand into Indonesia? How do I, if I'm outsourcing, how do I find that tech team? To the other side of the spectrum, which is, I hate my co-founder, or my partner wants to throw me out the window, or I can't talk in front of people. All of those kinds of internal things. So most founders are in multiple places along that continuum at any time. But because I have the operational experience, kind of the coaching experience, that's where I can add the most value, right? As opposed to just somebody who's says, "Oh, I want to help founders," right?
Right. So that sort of narrows things down a bit.
Exactly.
But and I'm sure it helps a lot when a founder is going through. I think in your response, you at least enlisted 20 types of problems a founder might be going through.
And that's this afternoon, right? Right over the course of a week or a month or a year, it's that times 20 or 100, right? So absolutely. It's quite a roller coaster, right? And there's so many different moving parts. It's difficult to sort of keep all the balls in the air. Absolutely.
So that being said, obviously, nobody needs to tell founders that they have problems, right? But is there a case to be made for just making your own mistakes yourself? And where does a coach, especially someone like yourself, sort of help them navigate that journey while you still are able to help them, but also sort of let them learn the hard way?
Sure. No, that's a really good question. Yes, there's some value. There is a lot of value to be learning these things yourself. Sometimes founders don't have time. Sometimes we don't have the time or the luxury of having enough money to do it, or things are just running so fast. And when you raise money and you now have investors who are like, what are you doing? I want monthly reports. When are you going to get profitable? When are you going to expand? A lot of those pressures are pretty extreme. In addition to just the day-to-day, I have 27 things on my list to do in the next hour, and how do I prioritize them? How do I do this, right? And I think that's where I can add the value. Is in general, I don't tell people what to do. I feel like that's mentoring. Mentoring's good. How do I build this spreadsheet? How do I do these projections? How do I build a P&L? That's like mentoring. I can do that for you, and then you're done with me. But with coaching, a lot of it is, I feel like the answers are within you. You know what the answers are, and my job is to help discuss them with you and have you clarify for yourself what's going on and how to solve the problems. Because I feel like there are a lot of people out there with a lot of you should do this, you should do that, a lot of cheap expertise, but I don't believe that that's helpful for anyone, right? It's like wearing other people's clothes in some way. You gotta wear the clothes that fit you, and come to the solutions that work best for you and your company and your situation. And I help you construct those and think them through and talk about them. Being a founder. Anybody who's been a founder knows it's really lonely. You can't even if you have a partner or spouse at home. They may not know what you're going through, or they're just sick of hearing it from you, or whatever. It's scary to talk to your investors. It's scary to talk to your co-founder. Do you let your team know that you're terrified, or that you're going to run out of money in 2 months, or all those are big issues. So having a safe, knowledgeable person by your side can be very helpful. And that's what I see myself being.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great description. So there's a distinction to be made between mentoring and coaching, and just being able to ask the right questions at the right time, I think is very valuable to somebody who's kind of feeling lost as a founder.
Yeah, exactly. And if I may just add to that, in terms of methodology, I'm very much more of a Socratic method. I'm going to poke around and ask questions, right? A lot of coaches have, here's a formula, here's a framework. I use them when I need to use them, but in this situation, it's much more, what's going on with you? What are you thinking about? What's upsetting you? What are you pleased with? What's firing you up? Where's the energy coming from, right? So that, I find that much more effective, and it's not cookie cutter, right? Everybody has a different set of issues. Everybody thinks and feels and works a different way. I would be selling you short if I was saying there's one way of doing it, right? So I try not to do that.
Yeah, I think it makes complete sense when you explain it like that, that there's no cookie cutter way to run a business, right?
No.
Fascinating. Now, so when you explain it like that, it almost seems like a no-brainer for, especially like you said, a slightly more advanced stage founder to have a coach to help them navigate pitfalls that they can no longer afford to to find out on their own. So with that said, do you see some common reasons why people hesitate to get founders, or also hesitate to find coaches or engage with coaches? Is there a barrier that you see on why people don't?
Sure. I love talking about this topic. So some of it's a little controversial. Let's look at my unscientific polling of founders across Southeast Asia. Generally, first-time founders tend to be men, okay? They tend to be firstborn, and they tend to come from some family money, okay? In general, broad strokes. I know this is true. So, and in many cases have been educated abroad, and abroad, by abroad, I mean in the States or the UK or Europe.
Have you been spying on me?
No, I mean, it's a profile there. It's a real profile. Which leads you to maybe not asking for help, right? Especially, you know, family dynamics, especially in Asia, are very different than like Western ones, right? So there's a lot of pressure to succeed. You know, somewhere in the background, somebody's saying, your sister's a doctor, your brother's a lawyer, what are you doing? You know, there's that whole conversation going on, right? And so, and asking for help sometimes implies weakness, and weakness affects face, and there's all of this kind of dynamic going on behind it in Southeast Asia, right? Which I think prevents people from feeling comfortable asking for help, especially guys, which is why there's a punchline to this, which is why 2/3 of my clients are women, are female founders. And I can't do the math, but if only like 5% of all companies founded in Southeast Asia are founded by women, and I have 2/3 of them are my, you know, are my clients, I think women are, it's easier for them to ask for help. It's not easy, but it's easier than for guys, especially who come from that kind of background, right?
Interesting.
So I'd love to have more male clients. It is becoming more acceptable to do that, and that's what it is. Part of it is like, it's okay to ask for help, but it's a big leap for a lot of people to publicly say, I need help, I need a coach. If you go to Silicon Valley, if you don't have a coach, you're weird. You know, you are the odd person out, right? Okay. But here, it's not a lot of founders have it, and not a lot of investors encourage it or know enough about it to encourage it, right?
Interesting. So, in the interest of perhaps even educating or putting some of these founders and investors at ease, so you've obviously worked with a lot of founders, different backgrounds, different nationalities, located in different parts of the world.
Right.
So there's a huge diversity in the kind of people you work with. But is there any sort of common set of problems that you see a recurring theme in that somebody listening to might feel, hey, I also face the same, and perhaps this is time for me to find a coach for myself?
I'd say Paul's greatest hits are, am I doing the right thing? Just a general, am I doing the right thing? You know, should I be doing this? Should I just go back and work for McKinsey again, or whatever that thing is, right? And this is in no particular order. The second one is I hate my co-founder, or I'm just having these problems with a co-founder, right? And the third one is issues at home, right? You know, because in general, like partner, a spouse, kids don't sign up for what you're going through as a founder, right? And there's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot. You know, I don't see my kids enough. My wife, my husband, my partner are like tired of me coming home exhausted and stressed all the time. And we're 5 years into this and it's not changing, right? That's a big issue. So talking about those kinds of things. And then I think in Southeast Asia right now, fundraising and becoming profitable are operational issues that are a lot more important than they were pre-COVID, let's say. You know, post-COVID, there was a little burst of funding, and then after that, just funding winter, right? And so now to have a startup and an early stage startup, finding money, investment money, and even do you want investment money, and what is that going to look like? Those are really big issues right now.
Interesting. Yeah, so those are some common themes that I imagine you see across multiple clients of yours. May I call them clients?
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. Now, so in the same vein, but sort of flipping the script, are there any unusual problems that you're kind of caught off guard by, without naming names, of course, but anything that you say, hey, I did not see that one coming?
Not so much problems as business specifics, right? I had a client in Bali who makes cheese in Bali, right? I know. She worked for a bank. She ran compliance for a bank, and then went to Bali to make cheese. And so one of the issues she faced is there are no cows in Bali, right? Right. I mean, it's a Hindu country, right? So the cows actually, the milk had to come from other places, and so a lot of what she struggled with initially was how do I get the milk into Bali to make the cheese, right? I mean, there's water buffalo and there's goats and there's sheep and there's other things, but other animals, but other ways to solve that problem. But she took on for herself a very big problem that I never would have considered, right? I mean, no one thinks about it when you think about cheese.
Business without milk.
Right, exactly. So that could be an example.
So yes, it's good to know that even after all these years, there's problems that it's like unusual challenges. Stuff that they're not run of the mill.
And that's what keeps me interested too. Is like if I was doing the same thing all the time, I get bored really quickly. But because I get to work with so many different kinds of people doing different kinds of things in different markets at different stages, that keeps me interested. And I read a lot, and so I can, if you have a problem. And we talk about it, I'll read about it and try to come up with some answers and think about it if it's something that I'm not intimately familiar with, right? So I get to learn and work with you to come to a solution. So like learning on one side, building on the other side, it's always been important to me. Harking back to my days making documentaries, that was the best thing about making documentaries, was I got to learn and I got to make, I got to build, right? And in many ways, it's the same thing here. I help you build, right? But we get to learn stuff together, and to me, that's very enjoyable.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds. I'm sure there's a lot of hair pulling in the middle, but but
sometimes just tears.
It just keeps the creative juices flowing, right?
Sure, absolutely, and it allows me to ask questions too. So again, going back to the more I think about it, the more I think being a documentary filmmaker was perfect for training me to become a coach, because if you make documentaries, you sort of have permission to ask questions. And so I got pretty good at asking questions, and I like asking questions. And so now I can still, if you were my client, I'm going bing, 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 bing. I'm asking you lots of questions, right? Some easy, some hard, but I like doing that, and I think I'm pretty good at it, and that's sort of how we make progress.
I'm sure you did not think while making documentaries that will help you be a founder coach several years
ago. I didn't even know what a founder was back then. That was a long time ago. Yeah,
different time. Now, this is one thing that, at least hearing you speak about this topic, hearing you write about this topic, even meeting you face to face at several events, founders' mental health is something that you're very vocal about, something that you advocate for. So, can you maybe tell me why it's important to you as a person and why it's important in your line of work?
Sure. Good question. Yeah, this is probably my favorite topic to talk about outside of coaching. When I give workshops and speak at schools or with accelerator programs or whatever, because I think it's not spoken about enough. Being a founder is really difficult, and it takes a lot out of people, and it's scary and it's isolating, and a lot of founders have stress that is not dealt with or not discussed, and that can turn into all sorts of physical kinds of things, or there are stories about founders taking their own lives. I mean, going so far that it's just they find that they can't get that there's no way out, and that's the only way out. So much higher than in other professions, right? Like 80% of founders who are polled nowadays feel like they are under undue stress and causing depression and things like that. So to me, that's very important. And needs to be talked about, and I believe that having support for founders to talk about those kinds of issues is important, and in some ways that informs my founder circle. Right. Where if you're with other founders, you can talk about these things securely and privately with other people who are going through the same issues with you, and can be supportive, right? And I think the more of that we can be doing and talking about it and coming up with tools and normalizing the fact that this is a scary thing, and I'm feeling really snaky about it, and unsure of myself and unsure of my family and who loves me, and success and failure get really blown up out of proportion. That's where I think I can help, and that's where I think the discussion should be. There should be more discussion of those issues, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you're sort of giving that topic a voice. So thank you for that.
Sure.
And I'm sure this is, and I'm sure it's a safe assumption to make that it is a huge part of the role that you play with founders. So not just the strategies of business, but also just how to manage your own sanity.
Yeah. And having gone through it myself, I mean, I had a quick version of the story is I had a company, this is my games company. We'd gone for 7 years and built the company up kind of using the old model, build it and then raise money once you've built it. Got to that point, I had a buyer, cash buyer, and I owned over 50% of the company. I wouldn't get like hugely wealthy, but my kids could go to like grad school and stuff. So, it was good. And then the financial crisis came in 2007, 2008. And boom, the company that was buying us lost their funding. Our funding got pulled. I had 40 people around the region working for me. I had a marriage that was on the rocks and 3 young children, and 2 months money in the bank. And it was really hard. It was really horrible. And I know just, for a year I went through that. It's really kind of incredible that I survived, but I survived because of friends, and I could talk to them, and eventually found a buyer and stuff. But it was really gruesome. And I know how hard that can be, and how hard we are on ourselves as founders, because I felt responsible for everybody, my clients, my employees, my kids, my wife, my investors, everybody I felt responsible for. And that's a lot to carry, especially if you have no answers, right?
That is true.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so it's and thanks for sharing that, and it's like you said, it's something that needs to be talked about more, and I'm repeating myself here, but I'm glad that there's somebody like you doing that.
Good, thanks.
Now, there's one question that is not coming from me. So this is Parmanand, the guy who will be editing this video.
Okay, sure.
I was just telling him that I'm coming to meet you, and he was just reading through your profile. And in your profile, he read a topic that you like to talk about is finding the right coach. So his question was, and I'm just relaying this here, is what is the type of founder, or or who are you the right coach for? So obviously post Series A, but is there any other sort of narrowing down criteria that, hey, you are the perfect fit for this kind of?
So my perfect, let's flip it around. My perfect client is a post-Series A client, but almost none of my clients are that. Okay, so some are further along, some are earlier stage.
Right.
It's a really good question. How to choose a founder coach that's right for you? I even wrote an ebook about it.
Oh,
which we can put in the notes. But it's very. I think it's personal, right? I don't work with founders in areas that I have no understanding of. So there's a certain point in health tech and biotech and deep tech that I don't go into because I just don't understand what the mechanics of the business are. There are some businesses. A lot of businesses work the same way. Some businesses don't work that way. So I'm not into crypto, right, and Web3. I just don't understand them well enough to be able to be helpful. Maybe I could be helpful, but I don't sell myself as that. So I kind of steer away from that. But then it's a personal thing. I've had people who just say, it's not a right fit. And that's fine. Right? Sometimes I've fired clients or said, you know what, I'm not the right guy for you because I don't feel it either, right? So there's no real tried and true method for finding the right coach. What I would recommend, and perhaps it's self-serving, but that if you're going to find a founder coach, find a coach who's been a real founder, who's been through it, who's done it, right? I mean, there's plenty of founder coaches out there right now who have not been founders. Who may have been in a startup once, but that's very different than laying awake at 3 a.m. thinking, where am I going to get the money, or what's going to happen here, or can I make the payroll, or can I launch this product on time, right? I mean, and feeling responsible for everybody. And I think having that experience plus the highs and the lows. Yes, I've raised $40 million. I know what that's like. I've expanded into multiple countries. Right. That's the stuff you probably want me to have rather than me reading it in the Straits Times or something, right?
True. Yeah, I think that just makes a lot of sense, right? If you've been there, done that, you are in a better position to help other people who are going through a similar journey, if not the same.
That's what I'd like to believe. Yeah. I'm not going to be your nutrition coach, right? For example. But
I hear you like to cook, so you never know.
Yeah, right. I can be your cooking coach. I'm not sure nutrition's the way to go, but yeah.
Sure. So that brings us to our last question of the day, which is what's next? So any new announcements, anything around the corner that the audience should know of?
I'm looking at building some coaching products that are for groups that can look at either teams of startups, the management team of your startup, or more corporate kinds of clients. Okay, on a lot of founders and a lot of new executives have no business training at all, right? So you find you're a great scientist and you've come up with this really great seed coding that helps grow corn in drought-struck parts of the world. Great. But you're not a business person, right? But all of a sudden you become a founder, right? What happens there, right? How do people, and sometimes those aren't even that extreme. When I got started, I had no idea what cash flow was, right? I started a company and I raised millions of dollars. I had no idea what cash flow was, right? So there's a whole set of business kinds of skills I think that need to be taught to entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs and even early stage executives, right? You get promoted, you're a good programmer, you're a good software engineer, you get promoted in your company and all of a sudden you have to speak in front of 100 people. Right. Right? I mean, you have no training in that because you're an awesome coder, but you're not a people person. Right? So those kinds of things. I'm doing that and I'm looking at building some other coaching products that maybe can go to other audiences.
Awesome. And where can we keep track of all of this?
I have a great website called AsiaFounderCoaching.com. Thank you. And I try to write regularly on blogs and blog posts there.
Awesome. So we'll keep an eye out for more updates on that front.
Great.
I hear you're also flying to Vietnam soon to...
Yeah, I'm giving a talk on mental wellness, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
ties in well.
Yeah.
Perfect. Anything else, Paul, that is around the corner that you'd like our audience to know?
Well, I am speaking in Vietnam, like we mentioned, next week, at a conference on mental wellness and founder fortitude, which I think is a little different than mental wellness, but tools that you can use to make yourself stronger so that it doesn't affect you as much. And I write a lot. I try to write a lot. So please go to the website, AsiaFounderCoaching.com. And I also talk a lot about the events that I'm doing, like Founder Circle or something like that.
Nice.
I have them there and on my newsletter. So, sign up for all of those in the usual socials. Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, we'll put a link to most of this in
awesome.
the description as well. So
Great.
You guys know where to find it. Any parting advice for before we sign off for the day?
Yeah, I think founders need to speak up. I think they should speak up and ask for help. It's okay to ask for help. Right? I mean, it took me a long time. I'm a guy, right? If guys are like this in general, like it's hard to ask for help, right? Guys don't use maps. They don't ask for directions, right? It's the same thing. Whatever that gene is, we tend to be missing it. So, it's okay to ask for help. And not everything needs to be hard. Being a founder, there's plenty of problems to solve, and asking for help, it doesn't have to be one of them, right? And having someone in your corner. Look at athletes. All athletes have coaches, and many, like LeBron or Serena, they had 10 or 12 different coaches, right? They had nutrition coaches and weight coaches and backhand coaches, and and that's a positive. That's not a negative, right? And that's how they get to be good. It doesn't take away from them. And I think sometimes we miss that in terms of business coaching or founder coaching. That having a coach can help you get better. It doesn't show that you're weak.
Oh, there you go. That's a good analogy, just comparing it with sports people. But that's a fantastic way to put it on, and why it makes sense for you to do what you do. Right? So so thank you, Paul. Thank you for taking the time. It has been a pleasure as always, and I will hopefully have more of you.
Good. Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. If you guys like the episode, make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.